With the January transfer window coming up, there's no doubt about it, Arsenal need to make some serious changes to their lineup. Now, one of the cheap alternatives of doing that is the potential return of Fabio Vieira, and if the rumours are true, it looks like he could be on his way to the Emirates sooner rather than later, so let's get into it. Now, this is definitely a very interesting video to make towards the end of 2024. The first video I ever made on this channel was in the summer of 2022 when Fabio Vieira first signed for the club. Now, this video is being made because there is a lot of reports about this happening. Fabio Vieira was not in the team for Porto for their game last night for a technical decision, in which he has been starting or at least playing a big feature in a lot of their recent games. Since he came back from injury, he kind of forced his way into that side and has been playing relatively well the more he has played. There has also been supposed rumours from some Porto links and some Arsenal links as well that potentially there's a private jet for him to go back to London. It might not be him, but it kind of seems a bit suspicious with the timing. Obviously, I don't know if this is completely true, but I do think it would make a lot of sense why Arsenal would try and bring him back. Now, first of all, you've got to look at the team as the problems that we have. Against Ipswich, you looked at our bench, and the only real attacker that we had on the bench was Waneri, the obviously 17-year-old, who is more of an attacking midfielder anyway, rather than an out-and-out forward. And everyone else was even a left back or a midfielder, so we need to have reinforcements. If Sterling is going to be out for a few weeks, maybe he'll come back soon. But even then, it's not enough. If we get another injury to one of the wingers, we are not in a good spot, and everyone is kind of up against their needs of how we've got to play in the different situations. And I do think this alludes to the fact, I think a lot of people have been saying that Arsenal should sign one or two players, probably a few players in this January window, but I don't think that's necessarily viable, and it's hard to get one good winger and a wide forward, let alone two, so I don't know if our club are really going to look in that way. That's why I think Fabio Vieira makes a lot of sense for us. Now, there's going to be a lot of criticism on him, and we will get into it, but I do think first and foremost, if it is a cheap deal, you can just cancel that loan with nothing added on, then it absolutely makes sense to do it. He only went out on loan because he asked the club to make that decision, and we decided it was a necessary risk. And although he had a bit of a patchy start when he returned to Porto, he was not really in the team, he's injured a lot, he has returned very well and been quite good in the last few games. He has 2 goals and 2 assists this season in around 900 minutes, which isn't the best, but I think on the ball he has looked a lot more confident there. Now, another thing is that out of the 16 games he has played on the bench or started, 12 of them he's actually played in that right wing or right midfield spot, which I don't know if Arsenal told them that they maybe wanted him to move into that wing position, but we definitely have tried to move Vieira into that right wing before. It's not necessarily a new thing. So instantly there, he has at least some more familiarity with that position than a lot of the players were playing there. First of all, let's talk about the positives of him coming back. It's cheap. It means we don't have to worry about necessarily signing some cheaper wingers that could be a bit high risk and not help the future. We've got someone that's already on our books, and it does give him time to actually develop within the team. I think this has been the problem with Vieira, is that he hasn't had enough time to maybe get as physical as he needed to or be good enough to really beat in a starting 11, and we haven't been able to give that to him. Now, I know I'm not saying that, you know, the season's a write-off, we're still in this title race, but it's definitely something to consider. When Saka's injured and we don't have any forwards, we could probably risk playing some of these players, and even if Jesus hadn't played well, I think he'd still be starting. I don't think we can really afford to play anyone else there. Now, first of all, Vieira being left-footed I think does help a lot. I've said that I like Martinelli on the right wing. I think it's a fair enough solution for certain games, but I think when you play against deeper mid blocks or low blocks like we saw against Ipswich, he really struggles because he can get to the byline and maybe, you know, attempt a cross, but there's so many players going up to him. It's not really like a chaotic game like the Crystal Palace one, which I think benefited a lot more. Now, Vieira is a left footer at the end of the day. He will make the angles a lot better down that side. He has the ability to cut in as well and cross it in, which his long passing and crossing is something that he is quite good at. And although he may take up some of the same areas as Odegaard, something I said about Waneri as well, I do think how he has played in different positions for Arsenal and how he is first and foremost used to that sort of crossing ability, I do think can help us. And the team is in a very different situation than he was last time, as he was played in that left half space in that position that Marino's in, where he played I think relatively well in some games, relatively bad in some others, but when given space on the counter attack, he is actually a lot better. If Arsenal give up a little bit of control in games, maybe play people like Partey, I think would do that, make Arsenal play a little bit for the second balls a bit more, I think he could work in this system. I think Vieira would give enough space on the break to make the right decisions, and he isn't really a ball carrier. Now, that is something that is big in low blocks. We saw it with Odegaard. As soon as he started doing it against Ipswich, we got a lot better. Now, that's why I don't think Vieira against these sort of teams would necessarily work, but he ultimately could get the space from deeper, you could say, depending on how far we push these teams back, which could also give him a good level to cross and provide good passes, which kind of gives a bit of responsibility ability on the creative side at least, not just all on Odegaard, which I think will be a problem going forward. I also think the benefit of him being able to play a bit in Porto, you know, have a bit of confidence and play in that position that we've wanted him to, may give him a little bit of an idea there. Now, like I said, I do think in certain games you'd probably want to play Martinelli there over him, and obviously Vieira shouldn't probably start. We all see how he is usually, but he is good enough to definitely be a squad player within the team. And if we get another injury to someone big like Odegaard, we have to have Vieira there anyway to cover, in my opinion. Now, there is some negatives about this. His physicality is still not amazing. I think, you know, he's done some improvements to it, but the problem is not necessarily that he doesn't have the strength, is that when someone goes into a tackle with him, he doesn't ever really gauge the impact. It's quite a weird thing to say, but when certain other players who aren't necessarily the strongest can at least identify how hard they're going to get hit, so they can sort of gauge their positioning and keep the ball. Now, that is actually not what he does very well, and he gets pushed off it too easily, and in certain situations this definitely could be bad. Arsenal are a very physical team now, even more when he was playing consistently, and that is just not going to cut it factually. But I do think the confidence is a big part of Vieira's game, and if he can get that down, I believe that he will enjoy himself a lot more. I also think he is actually a very good finisher or shooter from distance. Now, Odegaard usually is in them half spaces, which has been such a threat for us over the last few years, but for some reason he just doesn't have it at the moment. I just don't think his finishing ability has been very good, and when Arsenal get him into them good positions, he usually just does not score anymore, and it has been an issue for a few months now, so it's not just a small thing, where I think Vieira could probably, for at least a lot from deeper, can have that better ability at finishing. We've seen it in the past, and even from Porto on his left foot, he is very good at cutting in and shooting in that angles, which that half space could be negated more if he was going to be a backup for Odegaard. Now, obviously, there's a lot of questions about this. You know, Waneri's another big factor. You know, how are him and Waneri going to balance minutes? I think Vieira will probably play more on the right wing, I'd say, for now, but you can always still play him in the midfield if anything was to happen, and I do think how him and Odegaard work together would be quite intricate on the same side. We've seen them work together on the either side to each other, not so much on the same side. A few times I've seen Vieira on right wing, he's not really been in the game, but I do think he has the ability to play as a byline winger a little bit more than some other players like Martinelli. I think at least Vieira can play with the ball deeper. You know, he's got a better passing range, he's a bit more secure, I think, on the dribbling, maybe not necessarily for the strength, which could be another downside to that, but I do think it gives Arsenal another option. At least we can play someone who has played in right wing, who is left footed, and can give us that sort of level, because we still don't know when people like Sterling are going to be out for. Now, I will say I do think this is a good idea. It just makes a lot of sense. It ticks loads of boxes, and it's just there for a free givey. However, Arsenal still need to buy someone in January, and I still believe that we will potentially try and buy someone even outside of this deal. I think Arsenal probably need to sign a couple of wingers anyway. I mean, just having Waneri on the bench as your only forward option is not great. We can't consistently play that. We only were able to do a couple of subs against Ipswich, but I'm glad about this because I think it also gives Arsenal the idea of spending 40 to 50 mil on a player that is going to potentially cover a lot of spots, but also be very good now with even higher potential, compared to buying a couple of squad players for around 20 mil that may not be the best in the future. Now, obviously, I know we're not stupid. We're going to sign players that are at least probably going to help us in certain ways, but I think one big winger signing or wide forward and Vieira could be enough until Saka comes back, or at least it's enough we're going to have to deal with and see how things go. Overall, I know a lot of people, and me included, have been very negative on Vieira and given up on him in many ways. I think that is fair. He's been at the club a while now, 2 years, you know. Before this season he went on loan and he didn't really offer too much. He was relatively good in patches in 2022 and even last season at the start, but injuries, trust, and not really finding his way within the team from a positional standpoint did really screw him over. Now, it's hard to see if that's going to change when he comes back. Obviously, there is different factors in it now, but he never really was great as a winger because he wasn't strong enough and wasn't really fast enough. He is more of that deeper crosser, which we already have Odegaard in that position. However, there's a lot of factors in it, and I do think even Gabriel Jesus being in the team might help him. It's a player that will run in behind at least and give him that ability to do them through balls, and I think we saw it with Eddie when he was in the team, that he preferred playing with Eddie because Eddie would make them runs rather than other players who aren't necessarily going to do that. And I think with this system that we've adopted with Havertz and this diamond right now, Vieira could definitely be worth at least giving us some game time, considering he is still a part of the squad. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments about Fabio Vieira. Are you willing to give him another go or not? See you in the next one.